I need you to see this. This man was jogging along the railroad tracks. Tank top, shorts, sweating through both. Nothing crazy, right? Except, and here's where it gets wild, just a few hours earlier, this same officer had received an alert. Dangerous federal prisoner. Escaped from the maximum security penitentiary just up the road. White male, similar build, still in the area. So the officer pulls over, steps out, approaches the jogger. And the jogger? He doesn't run, doesn't freeze, doesn't even flinch. He smiles. They talk for 10 whole minutes. Out there on the side of the road, in the middle of a live manhunt, this man chats so casually, so normally, that the officer starts to doubt himself. Maybe this isn't the guy. Maybe he's just a construction worker out for a jog. So he lets him go. Be careful out there, buddy. And the jogger waves and disappears into the pine trees.
Yeah, in the future, if you're going to jog again, that way, I mean, if you get run over by a train, I know who you are. I don't have to start second guessing who he is, you know.
Can you write down your phone number, your cell phone number, so I can have whoever call you?
Just call, you got a cell phone with you?
No, hell no, I don't even have a cell phone or anything.
Just call 911 is all you got to do, and they'll get a hold of us.
All right.
That's our quick line there.
You have a good day now.
Be careful, buddy.
Thank you.
All right.
2 hours later, that officer finds out the truth. And I promise you, his stomach dropped through the floor. Now, could you do that? Look a cop dead in the eyes, knowing you're America's most wanted, and just smile your way to freedom? Drop your response in the comments if you think you've got the nerve. And if you're new here, this is the channel where the most unbelievable prison escapes in history get the deep dive they deserve. Hit subscribe. You're going to want to stay for this one. Because here's the thing, the roadside conversation, that's not even the craziest part of the story. Before that man ever set foot on those railroad tracks, he had already done something that federal prison officials said was impossible. I mean, something that had never been done before in the history of that facility. Something so audacious, so meticulously planned, that when investigators finally pieced it together, they could barely believe it themselves. To understand how Richard Lee McNair ended up jogging down those tracks, we need to go back to the beginning, to a man who lived two completely separate lives and destroyed both of them in a single night. So who exactly is Richard Lee McNair? Because that's the part that makes this story so unsettling. He wasn't some career criminal who grew up in and out of the system. He wasn't a gang member. He wasn't someone the neighborhood watched nervously from behind curtains. He was the guy you trusted. Born on December 19th, 1958, in Duncan, Oklahoma. A small, quiet oil town where everybody knows everybody and nobody locks their doors. Modest upbringing. Nothing that screams trouble. No early arrests, no juvie record, no warning signs that the people around him could point to later and say, yeah, we should have seen it coming. They couldn't. Because Richard McNair was genuinely good at being likable. He enlisted in the United States Air Force and earned his stripes as a military police sergeant, stationed at Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota. Think about what that means for a second. This man was literally law enforcement. He carried a badge. He enforced rules. He was trusted with the security of a military installation. And the community around the base? They loved him. Polite, well-spoken. The kind of guy who holds the door open, remembers your name, asks about your kids. If you needed someone to watch your house while you were out of town, Richard McNair was exactly who you'd call. But here's where it gets complicated. Because at some point, and nobody knows exactly when, McNair started living a second life after dark. Burglaries, grain elevators, warehouses, small business offices around Minot. Nothing violent, just quiet, calculated break-ins for cash. And here's the detail that still makes my head spin. While he was out there robbing businesses at night, he was also working as a paid informant for the Minot Police Department, feeding them tips, helping them close cases. He was literally on both sides of the law, simultaneously. Now you might be wondering, why? He had a career, a salary, a reputation worth protecting. This wasn't desperation. Not psychologists who later studied his case pointed to something darker than financial need, a compulsion for control, for the secret thrill of operating in spaces where no one could see him. The double life wasn't a burden to McNair. It was the point. But even double lives have cracks. McNair was eventually demoted from his position at the base, suspected of theft, not charged, not convicted, just quietly stripped of rank and reassigned. It was the first time the mask slipped, the first time the two worlds he'd been juggling so carefully started drifting toward each other. He should have stopped there, pulled back, disappeared into a normal life. He didn't. McNair thought he had it all compartmentalized. Two lives running in perfect parallel, never touching, never colliding. And for a while, he was right. Until the night of November 17th, 1987, when everything he'd built came apart at a grain elevator in Minot, North Dakota. November 17th, 1987. Late night. Minot, North Dakota. McNair moves through the darkness toward the Farmers Union Elevator Company, a grain warehouse he's likely cased before. Same routine. Get in, grab cash, get out. Nobody gets hurt. That was always the deal he made with himself. But the building wasn't empty. Inside, he comes face to face with two men, a security guard and a truck driver named Jerry Thies, a working man who had simply stopped by at the worst possible moment in his entire life. Wrong place, wrong night, wrong building. McNair panics. He has a gun. He opens fire. The security guard takes multiple shots, 4 bullets, and somehow survives. Jerry Thies is not so lucky. He dies at the scene. A man who woke up that morning, went to work, made ordinary decisions that ordinary people make every single day, waken, and never came home. That's the part that should sit with you. Because Jerry Thies isn't a footnote. He's the reason this entire story exists. Every escape McNair pulls off, every border he crosses, every alias he invents, at the root of all of it is this moment, this building, this man who never got a choice. McNair flees into the night and stays free for nearly 3 months. But in February of 1988, police call him in for routine questioning. He shows up and surrenders a concealed handgun on the spot. The evidence is overwhelming. Witnesses, ballistics, eventually his own confession. The judge doesn't blink. 2 life sentences, so plus 30 years for burglary. No possibility of parole. Richard Lee McNair would die inside a prison cell. Or so everyone thought. Here's something nobody tells you about Richard McNair. He didn't wait. Not even 1 day, not even 1 hour. The ink on his future wasn't even dry yet. He hadn't been formally sentenced, hadn't been processed, hadn't even fully absorbed the reality of 2 life sentences. And he was already gone in his head. Already looking for the exit. He's sitting in the Minot police station, handcuffed to a chair, 3 detectives in the room. Standard procedure. Just paperwork, just waiting. Routine. 1 detective steps out. McNair reaches into his pocket. Lip balm. I know how that sounds, but stay with me. He squeezes it onto his wrists, works it into the metal, coating the skin. Then he starts twisting, pulling. The cuffs bite in, hard. He doesn't stop, doesn't flinch. 1 hand drags through, then the other. He's free, inside a police station, and in under a minute. He runs to the nearest window, 3rd floor, 30 feet of open air down to concrete. He doesn't look twice. He jumps, lands brutally hard, back wrecked, legs screaming, gets up anyway and runs, actually runs, through downtown Minot with half the department on his heels. They eventually corner him on the roof of a 3-story building. He grabs for a tree branch, trying to swing clear. The branch snaps. He hits the ground. It's over. Recaptured the same day. Injured, hobbling, defiant. And somehow, that still wasn't the end of it. Transferred to Ward County Jail, Deputies later discovered he'd been quietly chiseling through 2 cinder blocks in his cell wall. A rope made from bed sheets already prepped and waiting. They caught it just in time. His first escape failed. His second attempt never launched. But here's what McNair took from all of it. The lesson that would define everything that came after. Speed without planning is just desperation. He filed that away. Deep. He would not forget it. 4 years pass. McNair is now inside the North Dakota State Penitentiary in Bismarck. Harder walls, tighter security. A place designed for people exactly like him. He gets to work immediately. No dramatic moves, no impulsive jumps. This time, patience. He and 2 other inmates identify a ventilation duct in their cell block. They study it, test it quietly. Then, night after night, they scrape. Millimeter by millimeter, loosening the grate, chipping away at decades-old concrete with whatever they can get their hands on. All of it done in near silence. All of it hidden in plain sight. On the night of October 9th, 1992, they move. One by one through the duct, roof, ground, cold North Dakota darkness. They split up immediately. Better odds that way. McNair vanishes. He dyes his hair blonde, grows a beard, steals cars, works cash-in-hand jobs, never sleeps in the same place twice. For 10 months, he drifts across America like smoke. Impossible to grab, impossible to track. Until Grand Island, Nebraska. A wanted poster, a phone call, officers surrounding the house where he's staying. He walks out with his hands up. No fight, no drama. And that's when authorities finally understood what they were dealing with. Not a violent hothead. Something far more unsettling. A man who learned from every single failure and came back sharper each time. They shipped him to Minnesota's Oak Park Heights facility. He staged a sit-down strike until they sent him back to North Dakota. From there, federal custody. USP Florence High, Colorado. Then, in 2005, a transfer to USP Pollock, Louisiana. His petition? Simple. It was marginally closer to his parents back in Oklahoma. McNair had just talked his way into his next hunting ground. After the second recapture, the federal system decided it was done playing games with Richard McNair. They sent him to ADX Florence, Colorado. If you don't know ADX, it's not a regular prison. It's the last stop. The place the system sends people it genuinely never wants to see again. Terrorists, cartel bosses, the most dangerous, most escape-prone, most untamable inmates in the entire country. 23 hours a day in a concrete cell, no windows, no congregating, no opportunities. The one place in America specifically engineered so that a man like McNair had absolutely nowhere to go. And McNair knew it. So he didn't try. Instead, he disappeared. Not physically, psychologically. He became the most unremarkable man in the most secure prison on earth. 0 incidents, 0 disciplinary reports. He took classes, participated in programs, smiled at the right people, said the right things during evaluations. Prison psychologists wrote it up in their reports. Reformed, matured, accepted his fate. It was a performance. Every single day of it. After years of flawless behavior, Lee McNair petitioned for a transfer, argued that ADX was excessive for someone who had clearly turned a corner. His lawyers pushed the paperwork. The Bureau of Prisons reviewed his spotless record and, in 2005, approved the move. USP Pollock, Louisiana. Maximum security. But not ADX. To the BOP, it looked like a reward for good behavior. To McNair, it was the opening he'd spent years manufacturing. He arrived at Pollock and within days he was already watching. Guard rotations, camera positions, shift change timing, delivery schedules. He volunteered for the Unicorp program, a prison manufacturing job repairing old canvas mailbags for the United States Postal Service. Tedious, repetitive, completely beneath the radar. Boring was exactly what he needed. Before we get to the escape itself, I genuinely want to know, how many months do you think McNair spent planning this? Drop your guess in the comments right now. The answer might genuinely shock you. And if this story is already messing with your head, hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds and it helps this channel keep bringing you stories exactly like this one. Now here's where it gets truly unsettling. Because McNair didn't just decide one day to hide in a pallet and hope for the best. What he built over months inside a maximum security federal prison, completely undetected, was an escape system. Engineered piece by piece, hidden in plain sight, assembled by a man who repaired mailbags for a living and apparently had all the time in the world. Start with the hollow. Over weeks of working the Unicore floor, McNair studied the shipping pallets with his eyes, never touching, never drawing attention. He calculated the exact dimensions needed to curl a grown man into a fetal position inside the center stack. Then he reinforced the interior cavity so the weight of surrounding bags wouldn't collapse inward and crush him once the forklift moved. Then the breathing tube, thin plastic tubing, scavenged from workshop scraps, the kind of material nobody notices going missing. He threaded it through the layers so one end reached outside the shrink wrap. A straw, essentially. Without it, he'd suffocate within minutes of being sealed inside. Then the blade. A single razor taped flat against his waistband. One tool, one purpose. Slice through the plastic from the inside when the moment came. Then the clothes. Gym shorts, a tank top, and running shoes, pieced together from the recreation area and donation bins over weeks. Every morning he walked into that workshop wearing his prison jumpsuit over a complete civilian outfit. Nobody noticed. Nobody checked. And the timing? Surgical. Forklift arrived at 11:30. Lunch break cleared the floor between 11:15 and 11:30. 15 minutes with no human eyes on that warehouse. Surveillance footage reviewed after the escape told the full story. 7:20 in the morning, McNair passes through the metal detector. Boxers, brown jumpsuit layered over civilian clothes. 7:50, bathroom hand wash caught on camera. Completely mundane, completely deliberate. Every movement that morning was choreographed. McNair wasn't going to work. He was going to perform. April 5th, 2006. A Wednesday morning at USP Pollock. Everything looks normal. McNair clocks in, takes his station, repairs mailbags, keeps his head down. To anyone watching, just another day, just another model prisoner doing his job without complaint. But he's watching the clock like his life depends on it. Because it does. 11:15. Workers start filtering toward the cafeteria. McNair tells the guard he'll stay behind, just needs to finish up a few bags. The guard nods. Of course he does. This is the guy with the spotless record. No concern whatsoever. The room empties. He moves fast now, strips the brown jumpsuit, stuffs it deep behind the workbench. Underneath, shorts, tank top, running shoes. He climbs onto the pallet, folds himself into the hollow he's been engineering for months. Canvas presses in from every side, and the smell of machine oil and old fabric fills the darkness. He finds the breathing tube. He breathes. 11:30. The forklift rumbles in, engine vibration crawling up through the concrete floor and into his spine. Forks slide underneath. Then, lift. The whole world tilts slightly and starts moving. 5 minutes. Slivers of daylight through the bag gaps. Voices outside. The pallet sets down with a heavy thud. He's outside the fence. He waits. 10 more minutes of absolute stillness, the longest 10 minutes of his life. Then silence. Razor blade out. One clean slice through the plastic. Loading bay door ahead. Open. Pine trees beyond that. He runs, for the first time in nearly 2 decades. No walls, no wire, no count. Just Louisiana heat and the sound of his own footsteps hitting open ground. Discovery came around 1 in the afternoon, Cut plastic, scattered bags, empty hollow. The 4 o'clock head count would have confirmed it officially. But a warehouse worker got there first. McNair had hoped for hours of head start. He got 2. Remember the jogger on the railroad tracks? Now you know exactly who he is. Officer Carl Bordelon of the Ball Police Department is the man behind the wheel. Dash cam rolling. Alert fresh on the seat beside him. Escaped federal prisoner, white male, dangerous, believed still in the area. He spots the jogger and pulls over. McNair later wrote that he didn't even see the cruiser coming. Trees blocked his sightline. By the time he registered the flashing lights, it was too late to run. So he made a decision in about half a second. Stay calm, stay in character, talk his way through it. Bordelon steps out, asks his name. Robert Jones. They talk. Bordelon circles back, asks again a few minutes later. Jimmy Jones. Different name, same man. Bordelon doesn't catch it. McNair spins the Katrina roofing alibi, construction work, just passing through, out for a jog. Plausible, timely, completely unverifiable on a rural roadside in under 10 minutes. Then there's the photo. The fax Bordelon received was grainy, 6 months old, and here's the part that's almost unbelievable. The prison hadn't even confirmed with certainty that McNair had actually escaped. The alert was tentative. Bordelon is standing in front of a man matching the description, working from a photo that barely resembles anyone. He makes the only call he can with what he has. Be careful out there, buddy. McNair waves, walks into the pine trees. Gone. McNair later described that moment in a single line. Relief, disbelief, bewilderment. All 3 at once. And Bordelon? He wasn't incompetent. He was handed bad tools and came face to face with a man who had spent nearly 2 decades perfecting the art of being believed. He stayed with Ball PD his entire career, rising to assistant chief. He passed away in 2015, aged 51. He never stopped thinking about those 10 minutes. By April 13th, Richard Lee McNair is on the United States Marshal Service Top 15 Most Wanted list. America's Most Wanted runs his story 12 times on television and 9 times on radio. McNair watches every single episode. He'd buy food and fuel before each airing, then go completely dark for days afterward, letting the tip lines cool down before moving again. He wasn't just running. He was managing his own manhunt like a chess player studying the opponent's last move. April 28th, Penticton, British Columbia. RCMP officers approach a stolen car in a beach parking lot. McNair bolts across an open field and outruns them. Clean. The car, however, tells the whole story. Selfies in multiple disguises, handwritten maps, fake IDs, fingerprints everywhere. It takes investigators 2 days to confirm his identity through America's Most Wanted tips. He's already gone. Bikes to Kelowna. Acquires a Subaru in Vernon. Drives to Blaine, Washington. Slips back into the United States. Then Minnesota. Then back into Canada again. The border means nothing to him. That summer, he scouts remote land near Williston Lake in British Columbia, seriously considering disappearing into the wilderness permanently. Drought conditions, beetle-killed forest, a single access road. Too exposed. He abandons the idea and drifts east, mountain biking through the Laurentians in Quebec, cycling along Lac Saint-Jean like a tourist without a care. Then, the Yukon. Over 1,000 miles on a stolen bicycle through some of the most isolated terrain in North America. He stops at a ranger station for coffee. There's a wanted poster tacked to the corkboard directly behind the ranger pouring his cup. McNair smiles, thanks him, and rides out. 2007. Fredericton, New Brunswick, nearly 2 months. Halifax, St. John. He attempts the Darby Line, Vermont border crossing. Too heavily guarded, turns back. Near Chilliwack, he returns to his motel to find a full SWAT team surrounding the building. False alarm, unrelated hostage situation. McNair pulls out his Sony HD camera and films it. His tech setup was extraordinary. Laptops, USB drives, Photoshop, a pet microchip ID website exploited to generate a fake Alaska driver's license. He rigged a camera to his laptop to cut his own hair using the screen as a mirror. He stole exclusively white vehicles, reading window stickers carefully to avoid anything with GPS tracking installed. He wasn't just surviving out there. He was living, watching his own manhunt on television like a man reviewing game tape. Paranoid, yes, but completely intoxicatingly free. In the end, it wasn't a task force that caught him. It wasn't a tip from America's Most Wanted. It wasn't facial recognition or a border checkpoint or 18 months of federal intelligence work. It was a van with bad window tint. October 25th, 2007. Off-duty RCMP Constable Dan Melanson is driving through Nash Creek, New Brunswick, when an expensive white cube van catches his eye. Ontario plates. Rear windows tinted so poorly, self-applied in a London, Ontario parking lot, that they look almost deliberately suspicious. Something feels wrong. Melanson doesn't stop it. He radios ahead to Campbellton instead. 6 weeks on the job. That's how long Constable Stéphane Gagnon has been a police officer when he spots the van rolling through downtown Campbellton. He initiates a stop, low-speed chase. Short-foot pursuit. McNair is taken down with Field Coach Constable Nelson Levesque right there on the street. ID fingerprints confirm it within minutes. 18 months, 2 countries, thousands of miles. Ended by a rookie and a bad tint job. McNair is cooperative, almost cheerful. When an officer mentions the $25,000 reward on his head, McNair doesn't miss a beat. All the government money is tied up in Osama bin Laden's reward. He later reflected on exactly where it all unraveled. If I'd buckled my seatbelt that day, I'd be in Mexico right now. Constable Melanson received the 2008 IACP, looking beyond the license plate grand prize for the observation that ended America's Most Wanted Fugitives run. One suspicious glance, one radio call. That's all it took. Richard Lee McNair went straight back to ADX Florence, then USP Florence High. Then, in November of 2022, on USP McCreary in Kentucky, maximum security, still counting the same 23 steps between one concrete wall and another. But here's what's strange. McNair didn't go quiet. Over the years following his recapture, he exchanged over 250 letters with Canadian journalist Byron Christopher. More than 3,000 handwritten pages in total. Candid, intelligent, darkly funny in places. Christopher turned it all into a book. The Man Who Mailed Himself Out of Jail, published in 2013. It remains one of the most intimate portraits of an escape artist ever put to paper. In McNair's own words, unfiltered. Meanwhile, the Bureau of Prisons quietly dismantled everything McNair had exploited. The Unicorn mail program at Pollock, shut down. Perimeter work assignments, restricted. In-pallet shipments, mandatory inspections. Tool inventories, tightened. His escape is now a formal federal training case study, taught to correctional officers across the country as a masterclass in institutional blind spots. The system learned, expensively. And McNair's place in history? Undisputed. He's the only prisoner ever confirmed to have successfully escaped a city jail, a state penitentiary, and a federal maximum security prison. 3 facilities. 3 completely different security levels. 3 successful breakouts. No one else has done it, not even close. So, what did the most embarrassing escape in federal prison history actually teach us? A few things. Learned the hard way. Routine is a weapon. McNair didn't need inside help or stolen keys. He needed a predictable forklift schedule and a 15-minute lunch window. And that's it. Randomizing daily operational routines, delivery times, shift changes, work assignments, makes long-term planning nearly impossible for anyone watching from the inside. Work assignments aren't rewards. Giving a 3-time escape artist a perimeter-adjacent job because his behavior file looked clean was an institutional failure hiding in plain sight. Documented escape history should permanently restrict certain work assignments. Full stop. Good behavior earns privileges. It shouldn't erase a paper trail. Cameras without eyes are just decoration. Every movement McNair made that morning was captured on surveillance footage, reviewed after he was already gone. Real-time monitoring with anomaly detection in shipping and receiving areas would have flagged a man who never came back from the warehouse floor. A bad photo almost let him walk forever. Officer Bordelon had a 6-month-old grainy fax and an uncertain alert. Real-time biometric data sharing between federal facilities and local law enforcement isn't a luxury. It's the difference between 10 minutes on a roadside and 18 months across 2 countries. And the model prisoner trap? The most dangerous thing a prison can do is confuse performance with transformation. Behavioral reform should be verified, not assumed, especially for men who've already proven they treat good behavior as a strategy. McNair proved that even the most fortified institutions have cracks, and that patience, intelligence, and nerve can exploit every single one. So here's what I want to know. Do you think the federal prison system has actually fixed the vulnerabilities McNair exposed? Or are there men in cells right now, watching, waiting, planning, running the same long game he ran? Drop your theory in the comments. I read every one. If this story kept you watching until the end, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves true crime, and subscribe. New escapes drop every week. And trust me, the next one, you won't see it coming.